Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm so glad you've joined us. This is a space where we talk about the real stuff, the joys, the struggles, the big questions that come with growing older. Today, I want to share a story that's been on my mind a lot lately. A story that gets to the heart of a question so many of us face as we age. The title of today's video says it all. Is it better to live alone or with children in old age? I'm 68 years old, and I've been living in a nursing home here in the US for the past 2 years. As I've settled into this new chapter of my life, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that question. Whether I'd be better off living on my own, or if I should have tried harder to live with my children. It's not an easy question to answer, and I've had to face some hard truths along the way. I want to take you through my journey today, share the lessons I've learned, the pain I've felt, and the hope I've found. My hope is that this story helps you if you're wrestling with the same question, or if you just want to understand what life is like for so many of us as we grow older. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's talk about it. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your own thoughts. Let's get started. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 68 years old. I live in a nursing home called Sunnydale Senior Living, a small facility in a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I've been here for about 2 years now, and it's been a journey, let me tell you. I never thought I'd end up in a place like this, you know. When I was younger, I always pictured myself growing old in my own home, maybe with my kids and grandkids coming over for Sunday dinners, or maybe living on my own, independent and free. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? And for me, the question of whether it's better to live alone or with my children has been one of the hardest ones to answer. Let me take you back a bit so you can understand how I got here. I grew up in a small town in Indiana in the 1950s and 60s, a time when life was simpler, but expectations for women were pretty clear. My dad was a schoolteacher, my mom stayed home to raise me and my 2 brothers, and I was taught that my role was to be a good wife, a good mother, a good homemaker. I followed that path without much question. I went to nursing school, worked as a nurse for a few years, and then I met my husband, Jim, at a friend's wedding when I was 24. We got married a year later, and we had 3 kids. Laura, who's 44 now, Mark, who's 41, and Jessica, who's 38. Jim and I built a good life together, a life full of love and chaos and laughter. I stayed home to raise the kids while Jim worked as a manager at a hardware store. We had a little house in the suburbs, with a big backyard where the kids would play for hours. I'd spend my days cooking, cleaning, helping with homework, driving the kids to soccer practice and piano lessons. It wasn't always easy. Money was tight sometimes, and Jim worked long hours, but we made it work. We'd have family dinners every night, all 5 of us around the table, talking about our day, sharing stories, laughing together. Those dinners were the heart of our family, you know? They were the moments that made everything else worth it. Jim passed away 8 years ago, just after our 35th anniversary. He had a heart attack, and it was so sudden, so unexpected. Losing him was like losing a part of myself. We'd built our whole world together. Our home, our family, our routines, and suddenly he was gone. The house felt so empty without him. I'd walk past his chair in the living room, see his reading glasses on the table, and just break down. I tried to keep going, to keep living the way we always had, but it was so hard. The kids were grown by then, with their own lives. Laura's in Boston, working as a marketing director, with 2 kids of her own. Mark's in Chicago, a software engineer, always busy with work. Jessica's the closest, in Cincinnati, but she's a single mom with a demanding job as a teacher. They'd call, they'd visit when they could, but it wasn't the same as having Jim there. After Jim passed, I tried to stay independent for as long as I could. I'd lived in that house for 40 years, raised my kids there, made so many memories there. I didn't want to leave. I'd garden in the backyard, keep up with the housework, drive to the grocery store. But about 3 years ago, things started to change. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and it made everything so much harder. My hands would ache, my knees would swell, and some days I could barely get out of bed. I had a fall one morning. I was trying to carry a laundry basket down the stairs, and I lost my balance. I didn't break anything, thank goodness, but I twisted my ankle pretty badly, and I was stuck on the floor for an hour before a neighbor heard me calling for help. That fall scared me, and it scared my kids too. Laura and Mark flew in to help, And they started talking about how maybe it was time for me to move somewhere safer, somewhere I could get more support. I didn't want to hear it at first. I said, I'm fine, I can manage. I've been managing my whole life. Raising 3 kids, running a household, taking care of Jim. But deep down I knew they were right. I couldn't keep going the way I was. My arthritis was getting worse, and I was at risk for more falls, more injuries. That's when we started talking about my options. Whether I should live alone, move in with one of my kids, or go to a nursing home. The idea of living alone sounded good at first. I've always been independent, you know? I like the idea of staying in my own space, making my own rules, not being a burden to anyone. I'd read about aging in place, where you stay in your home as you get older, maybe with some help from a home health aide. I thought I could make that work. Hire someone to come in a few hours a day, help with the housework, make sure I was okay. But the reality wasn't so simple. My house wasn't set up for someone with mobility issues. There were stairs everywhere, the bathroom wasn't accessible, and I couldn't afford the renovations I'd need to make it safe. Plus, the cost of a home health aide was more than I could manage on my Social Security and Jim's small pension. I read somewhere that the average cost of in-home care in the US is about $4,000 a month, and that's just for part-time help. I didn't have that kind of money. I also started to feel the loneliness of living alone. When Jim was alive, the house was always full of noise. Kids running around, neighbors stopping by, Jim and I talking over coffee in the morning. But after he passed, and with the kids so far away, the silence was deafening. I'd go days without seeing anyone, except maybe the mailman. I'd try to keep busy, watch TV, knit, call my sister in Florida. But it wasn't enough. I felt so isolated, so cut off from the world. I read that loneliness is a big problem for older folks in the US. Something like 40% of people over 65 report feeling lonely at least some of the time. Believe it, felt it. And I started to worry about what would happen if I had another fall, or if I got sick, and there was no one there to help me. The other option was moving in with one of my kids. I'll admit I liked the idea at first. I thought maybe I could live with Laura in Boston, be close to my grandkids, help out around the house. Or maybe Mark in Chicago. He's got a big place, and I know he'd make room for me. Jessica's situation is a bit harder, since she's a single mom with a small apartment, but I thought maybe we could make it work. I imagine being part of their daily lives again, having dinner together, watching my grandkids grow up, feeling needed. I think a lot of moms my age in the US dream of that, you know? We've spent our lives taking care of our families, and the idea of being close to them as we age. It's comforting. But when I brought it up with my kids, I could tell they were hesitant. Laura said, "Mom, I'd love to have you, but our place is so small, and the kids' schedules are crazy. Soccer, ballet, school events. I don't know if we'd have the space or the time to give you what you need." Mark was more direct. He said, "Mom, I'm worried I wouldn't be able to take care of you the way you deserve. I'm working 60 hours a week, and I'm barely home." Jessica just hugged me and said, "I wish I could, but I'm stretched so thin already, trying to raise Emily on my own." I understood, I really did. My kids have their own lives, their own responsibilities. They're not wrong to prioritize their families, their careers. But it still hurt, you know. I felt like a burden, like I was asking too much. I think that's a common struggle for a lot of older folks in the US, especially for moms like me. We've spent our whole lives putting our kids first, sacrificing everything for them. And then when we get older, we realize they can't always do the same for us. It's not their fault, it's just how life works now. Families are more spread out, kids move away for jobs, everyone's busy with their own lives. I read that only about 20% of older adults in the US live with their children, compared to maybe 50% a few generations ago. It's a big shift, and it leaves a lot of us wondering where we fit in, where we belong. In the end, we decided that a nursing home was the best option for me. My kids helped me find Sunnydale, and I moved in 2 years ago, just after my 66th birthday. It was a hard transition, I'm not going to lie. I went from a house full of memories, Jim's garden tools in the garage, the kids' old drawings on the fridge, to a small room with a bed, a dresser, and a chair. My room's on the second floor, with a window that looks out onto a little courtyard with a bird feeder. I brought a few things with me. A picture of Jim and me on our honeymoon, a quilt my mom made, my favorite teapot, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like I was giving up, like I was losing the last piece of the life I'd built. The routine here took some getting used to too. At Sunnydale, everything runs on a schedule. Breakfast is at 7:30, lunch at noon, dinner at 5:30. There's a nurse who comes by every morning to check my vitals and give me my meds. Pills for my arthritis, for my blood pressure, for my cholesterol. I've got physical therapy twice a week to help with my mobility. And a social worker who checks in every month to see how I'm doing. They've got activities too. Bingo on Thursdays, a gardening club on Saturdays, movie nights on Fridays. At first, I didn't want to do any of it. I just sit in my room, look at that picture of Jim, and think about the life I used to have. It felt so out of place, so lonely. Living in a nursing home has given me a lot of time to think about that question. Is it better to live alone or with my children? I've seen both sides of it now, and I've come to some conclusions, but it hasn't been easy. When I was living alone, I had my independence, my freedom, my space. I could make my own decisions, keep my own routines, live on my own terms. But I was also so lonely, so isolated, and I was always worried about what would happen if I got hurt or sick. Here at Sunnydale, I've lost some of that independence, but I've gained a sense of safety, a sense of community. I've got nurses and aides to help me, friends to talk to, activities to keep me busy. But I still feel the ache of not being with my family, of not being part of their daily lives. One of the hardest things about being here is how much I miss my kids and grandkids. I think about what it would be like to live with them, to be there for the little moments. Helping Laura's kids with their homework, having coffee with Mark in the morning, reading bedtime stories to Jessica's daughter, Emily. I imagine being part of their routines, feeling needed, feeling loved. But I also know it wouldn't be perfect. I've talked to other folks here who've tried living with their kids, and they've told me about the challenges, the lack of space, the stress it puts on their children, the feeling of being in the way. One woman, Betty, told me she lived with her son for a year, but she felt like a guest in her own family. She said, "I didn't want to be a burden, so I came here instead." I think about that a lot. I've also seen the benefits of living in a place like this. I've made friends here, and that's been a lifesaver. There's a woman named Dorothy, who's 72, a retired teacher like my dad. She's got the best sense of humor, and we'll sit in the courtyard sometimes, feeding the birds, talking about our lives. There's also Sam, a 78-year-old veteran who loves to play cards. We'll play gin rummy in the common room, and he'll tell me stories about his days in the Navy. These friendships, they've given me a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. I don't think I would have found that if I'd stayed in my house, living alone. The staff here have been a blessing too, even if they're not perfect. There's a nurse named Maria who's my favorite. She's in her 40s, always smiling, always asking how I'm doing. She'll sit with me sometimes just to chat, and I can tell she really cares. But I know they're overworked. I've heard that staffing shortages are a big problem in nursing homes across the US. Sometimes there's only one aide for 20 residents, and they're running around all day trying to keep up. It means things get missed sometimes. I've had days where I had to wait an hour for someone to help me to the bathroom, or where my lunch was late. It's frustrating, but I try to be patient. I know they're doing their best. The food here is, well, it's not great. I think that's a common complaint in nursing homes. Breakfast is usually oatmeal or eggs. Lunch is a sandwich or soup. And dinner might be chicken with mashed potatoes or baked fish. It's all pretty bland. They're careful about salt and sugar because so many of us have health issues. I miss cooking for myself, you know? I used to make the best lasagna, Jim's favorite, with extra cheese and a little bit of spice. I'd give anything to make that again, to have my kids around the table, laughing and eating together. But every once in a while they'll do something special here, like on Thanksgiving they had a big dinner with turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie. That was a good day. We all sat together, shared stories, felt like a little family. I think the biggest benefit of being here, though, is the safety. I don't have to worry about falling down the stairs, or not being able to get out of bed, or having a medical emergency with no one to help. I've got nurses on call 24/7, a doctor who visits every week, and a whole team of people looking out for me. I didn't have that when I was living alone, and I know I wouldn't have that if I lived with my kids either. They're too busy to be my full-time caregivers. I read that falls are a leading cause of injury for older adults in the US. Something like 1 in 4 people over 65 falls each year. I don't want to be part of that statistic, and being here helps me avoid that. But even with all the benefits, I still feel the ache of not being with my family. My kids visit when they can, but it's not often. Laura came last summer, brought her 2 boys, and we had a wonderful day together. We sat in the courtyard, played Uno, ate ice cream. But when they left, I felt this emptiness, this longing. Mark calls every week, and we talk for an hour, but it's not the same as having him here. Jessica visits the most. She'll drive up on weekends sometimes, bring Emily, and we'll spend the day together. But she's got so much on her plate, and I hate feeling like I'm adding to her stress. I know they love me, I know they're doing their best, but I wish I could see them more. I think that's the hardest part about being here, the distance from my family. If I lived with my kids, I'd be part of their lives every day. I'd see my grandkids grow up, be there for the big moments and the small ones. But I also know it would come with its own challenges. I've seen how busy my kids are, how much they're juggling. I don't want to be a burden, to add to their stress. And I've heard stories from other folks here about how living with their children didn't work out. How they felt like they were in the way, how they lost their sense of independence. I don't want that either. So, is it better to live alone or with children in old age? I think the answer depends on who you are, what you need, what your family is like. For me, living alone gave me independence, but it also left me lonely and scared. Living with my kids would bring me closer to them, but it might also make me feel like a burden, and I'd lose some of the safety and support I have here. Being in a nursing home isn't perfect. It's not the same as being with my family, but it's given me a sense of community, a sense of safety, a way to keep going. I think for me this was the right choice, even if it's not always easy. I've also learned a lot from this experience. Things I wish I'd known earlier. I've learned to appreciate the little things. The sound of the birds in the courtyard, a good laugh with Dorothy, a phone call from Mark. I've learned to be grateful for the life I've had, even if it's not the life I have now. I've learned to find joy where I can, to build connections, to keep going. I think that's something a lot of older folks in the US need to hear, especially if you're facing this question yourself. There's no perfect answer, no one-size-fits-all solution. You have to do what's right for you, what gives you the most peace, the most joy. I've also been thinking about what I'd say to my kids, or to any younger folks out there who might be listening. I tell you to talk to your parents, to really listen to them, to understand what they need as they age. Maybe they want to live with you, to be close to you, to feel needed. Or maybe they want their independence, their own space, their own routines. Whatever it is, help them find a way to make it work. And if they're in a place like this, visit them. Call them. Let them know you're there. It means more than you'll ever know. I want to end with a little message for anyone out there who's wrestling with this question, or who has a loved one facing it. If you're trying to decide whether to live alone or with your children, take your time. Think about what you need: safety, independence, connection, and what your family can give you. Talk to your kids, talk to your friends, talk to people who've been through it. And if you're in a nursing home, or if you have a parent in one, don't give up on finding joy. Build connections, find routines, make the most of the time you have. Life doesn't stop just because you're older, just because you're in a place like this. There's still so much to live for. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you faced this question yourself? What did you choose? Let's keep this conversation going. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this story. Until next time, take care of yourself. And if you're feeling torn about where to live as you age, know that you're not alone. We're in this together.